Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Wedding Season. Wedding Season is an American romantic comedy that tells the story of Asha, an economist working for a big business who frequently deals with pressure from her family to get married and start a family when she would rather focus on her career. On one of her dates, which are set up by her mother, she meets a man named Ravi. The two relate to each other in that they both deal with family pressure to be married, so they agree to start a fake relationship to keep their parents off their backs while they attend a number of weddings over the summer to uphold their image. During this time, their love goes from being fake to something more. I was worried this would end up being yet another bog-standard rom-com, and it sort of is, but I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. Its themes surrounding Indian culture were enjoyable, along with how easygoing and lighthearted it is, and it features a good message about following one's path to happiness. Asha was a hilarious protagonist, mostly by virtue of the fact that she's the complete opposite of her parents. She is not in the mood for love, at least at first, and makes it a point to bring this up all the time with her parents, particularly her mother, and this often results in the two parties butting heads. Although I'm not Indian myself, I found myself relating to Asha right from the start. I grew up in a conservative household with parents who didn't always respect what I wanted out of my life, which frequently resulted in conflict, and the way this type of conflict is approached with a more comedic twist helped me connect to her experience in a more entertaining way. I also liked how driven she was as a character, working hard for the business she's employed at to obtain funding for potential women entrepreneurs in Singapore. I was impressed with how well the subplot was fleshed out. Not only does this give her a goal to pursue outside of the romance, but it even comes up inside the romance at times with how much of a math whiz she is, which adds to the movie's fun nature. Ravi was a decent love interest to go along with Asha. He's actually not that much different compared to her in terms of personality, in that he more or less has the same amount of wit and also a dream that he wants to pursue, but has a hard time in doing so. There is one key difference though, in that he's not bound by work as much as Asha is. He does help out with his father's restaurant business where he can, but he has a much different philosophy as far as a work-life balance is concerned, and the way he explains himself over the course of the story in this regard was intriguing. Due to them coming together just to placate their parents, the two do not start off on the right foot, which is good to see. Their awkward pairing makes for a lot of witty banter between the two, as well as amusing situations when they try to keep up appearances in front of others. Eventually, they start warming up to each other due to their similar backgrounds, which makes the romance much more believable when it finally happens. The way they bond and close the distance between each other feels organic, and it was great to see them continue being a couple and supporting each other once they do make things official. Now, while I did like that they came from similar walks of life, I felt that they were a bit too similar. Both of them have exactly one parent that's pushy just with gender swap, and they have some sort of past event behind them that's made out to be a bigger deal than it actually is. And to be fair, it's entirely possible that I'm lacking some cultural context behind what exactly the big deal is between Asha having an ex-boyfriend and Ravi being a college dropout. These things are pretty trivial for an average Canadian like myself, but I imagine they'd be a lot more serious for those who come from more conservative cultures like what Indians might. Even taking this into consideration though, their pasts never have that much to do with what happens in the story, and their almost identical personalities start to get old after a while. Thankfully, the other supporting characters in the movie do a great job at picking up some of their slack. Asha's co-workers and sister Priya were great supporting characters. They provide an outlet for Asha to vent her frustrations with her relationship predicament away from eavesdropping ears, and as with other characters, they all have great comedic chemistry together. The parents on both sides of the relationship are by far the best of the bunch. Asha's mother's constant meddling and her father trying to ease his wife's nerves are hilarious to see in action, as it is too with how the personalities swap with Ravi's parents. Though the parents once again are a bit derivative of each other, what makes them stand out more is how they reinforce the movie's central theme regarding love versus fear, with how Asha and Ravi try their best to follow their passions for business and music respectively, but feel hesitant to do so because of how their parents and others in their circle may react. It appears to be an authentic look into how Indians observe the value of relationships with others and how sometimes boundaries can be overstepped. Parents set up online dating profiles for their kids, close friends act snoopy and spread gossip, and there's just this general sense of closeness that almost feels suffocating, which was great at highlighting how frustrated Asha and Ravi are with their circumstances. Because it's a comedy though, the movie doesn't usually get too overwhelming with drama. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of funny lines exchanged between the two leads and their family members, and it never resorts to cheap slapstick, which I appreciated. The only part of the comedy that I felt stuck out like a sore thumb was anything to do with Asha's sister's boyfriend, Nick, with how way over the top he goes and how much he immerses himself into Indian culture. None of his jokes really landed for me, and his story arc just felt lazily executed. By far, the most entertaining scenes in the movie are the weddings that the pair attend together. I knew weddings were a big deal for Indians, but I had no idea the sheer scale that some of them could be, and the movie has a lot of fun showing them off here. What makes them so great isn't just how much of a spectacle they bring, but also with how diverse they are. Men and women from varying cultures get married despite whatever opposition others may have. So on top of keeping the story fresh with how many different ones there are and adding to the light tone, their intersectionality reinforces the message of following one's heart. It's through these weddings and Asha's family that a lot of social commentary gets brought up, such as social caste, spousal dependence, and demeaning those who don't hail from privileged occupations. The movie doesn't dive too deep into these subjects, but I was pleasantly surprised with how much of it was here and how well they tied into Asha and Ravi's narrative. This same narrative does start to weaken toward the final act. It's not necessarily bad, but it becomes a lot more predictable in structure, losing the uniqueness of Asha and Ravi's relationship and resembling more of an average rom-com with how characters split and get back together again. It also gets a bit silly with how much drama and how many surprises show up out of nowhere during this part, and the dynamics of the relationship become confusing after a while, as they kinda sorta keep up their act but are actually in love, so I wasn't 100% sure where the characters stood. While the story does play out pretty much exactly as one would expect, the way it explores its themes pertaining to Indian culture put a lot more substance and even more style into it than if it were about any other couple. It definitely benefits from being written by an Indian screenwriter, as there's a lot of good work put into the finer details behind it that could only be pulled off by someone with that kind of lived experience. Overall, Wedding Season is a typical romantic comedy at first glance, but evolves into something much more memorable over time. If you like romantic comedies, you want to see one with Indian characters and themes, and are okay with them being a bit formulaic, you'll definitely have a good time watching this. Even though there are more than a few tropes in it, I enjoyed seeing the chemistry of the cast and the energetic tone of it all. It's a lighthearted love story that transcends cultural barriers and makes for a fun weekend watch with your loved one. What did you think about this movie? Do you think it did a good job with how it examines relationships in Indian culture, or do you think it could have improved in this area? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Wedding Season. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the South Korean action flick, Carter. Bye bye!